Someone was living under the house, a chilling true story of frogging. A woman who lived alone in a rural area began noticing small things that didn't make sense, tiny inconsistencies that slowly eroded her peace of mind. Her home was her sanctuary, isolated from the world, but that isolation would soon become her greatest source of fear. It started with the food, disappearing from her kitchen, but only a little at a time, a slice of bread here, a piece of fruit there. Then, the furniture. A chair would be pulled out when she was sure she'd pushed it back in, just an inch or two, as if someone had just stood up. Once, she found muddy footprints in the utility room after a heavy storm, but every door and window in the house was still locked tight. She assumed she was simply being forgetful. Stress, perhaps? She desperately wanted to believe there was a logical explanation for it all. Then came the noises. One night, she heard what sounded like heavy, deliberate footsteps in the crawl space directly beneath her home. She convinced herself it was an animal, a raccoon maybe, or a stray cat that had found a way inside. Anything but the truth. Weeks later, the noises became more frequent. The illusion of safety was crumbling, replaced by a cold, growing dread. Just after midnight, she'd hear slow, rhythmic scraping sounds under the floorboards, like something heavy being moved with great care. The sounds weren't frantic like an animal. They were calculated, patient, as if someone was waiting for the perfect moment. Finally, the fear became too much to bear. She called a pest control company, hoping they would find a nest of rats and end the nightmare. But when the workers opened the hatch and climbed into the darkness, they didn't find animals. They found a nightmare made real. In the far corner, they discovered evidence that a human being had been using the crawl space as a living area for a very long time. There were blankets, food containers, and bottles of water. Everything someone would need to survive right beneath her feet. And the intruder had been living there for an unknown period, coming out only when they believed the woman was asleep or away from home. They moved through her rooms while she was out, eating her food and sitting in her chairs before retreating back into the dirt before she returned. The person was long gone by the time the police arrived. They had vanished back into the shadows, leaving only their nest behind. The most frightening realization for her wasn't that someone was there. It was that they were just a few feet beneath her while she slept, night after night. This phenomenon is known as frogging. It's rare, but police have documented many cases of people living secretly in the homes of others. It serves as a chilling reminder. Your home may be your castle, but you might not be the only one with the keys. Next time you hear a sound beneath the floorboards, don't assume it's just the house settling. Good night. My father tried to let me die in his living room. He took me trick-or-treating in the mid-90s, recently divorced from my mother after I caught him with another woman. I was the one who told my mom on him. I was 6 years old. At one stop for a trick-or-treat house, my dad reached across me and popped the latch on the passenger door. But instead of getting out through that door, I crawled over his empty seat and got out on the driver's side, then got back in on his side. As he was speeding up on the highway, I fell asleep with no seatbelt on and tumbled out of the van. I skidded along the road and slammed my head on the pavement. I didn't come back to consciousness until a while later. I awoke on the floor of my father's living room. I saw the back of his head pacing the house as I lay there. He then loaded me back into the van and drove me home and handed me over to my mother. I was covered in road rash, scrapes, some blood, dirt, and I had a concussion. My mum cared for me, but she never took me to a hospital either because he downplayed what happened. My mum actually believed whatever he told her. She still didn't know until I asked her about it as an adult. What creeps me out the most in hindsight was that my father never took me to the ER, never called 911. He loaded my unconscious body into his vehicle and carried me into his house. It's like he had settled on letting me pass away and calling it an accident. We no longer speak to one another. Worst part of all this is that my costume was Casper. I was a friendly ghost while my own father was deciding my fate. Halloween was never the same after that night in the mid-90s. It took years to understand the weight of what happened, to realize that the accident was a choice. Some memories are ghosts that never quite leave us. Spoke with a woman after she died in a car crash miles away. I've been in law enforcement for over 16 years here in Texas and have seen more than my fair share of tragic, creepy, and downright unexplainable things on the job. From murder scenes to suicides to fatality accidents, sometimes a place just feels different. I've posted here before about a burglary in progress call I responded to, but here's another encounter that still sticks with me. I may have shared it before, but I figure it's worth repeating for everyone. There was one call I went to, a death notification that really freaked me out. I had to contact some family members of a deceased woman that was involved in a fatal car accident a few miles away from her home. When I arrived, I met a woman near the roadway, just inside the property gate. She said she heard me coming from miles away. I asked her if she lived at the residence, which she confirmed she did. After asking her to speak with me at the house, she agreed, but said she needed the walk as the house was about 75 yards from the road. After making it to the house, I approached the front door on a small wooden porch and began scanning the driveway for the woman. It was about 1 a.m. and completely dark. While looking for the woman, the front door opened and a younger woman appeared. She was concerned about my presence and asked if everything was okay. I asked if I could speak with her and any other adults inside, and she welcomed me in. I told her I would wait for the woman I met near the gate, and she told me nobody else should be home. I then freaked out and began searching the property. Nothing. After entering the residence, I told her and her husband the news about Susan, which ended up being her mother. She said her mother moved in a few months back after her father had passed and wasn't handling it well. While she and her husband were comforting one another, I began looking at photos on the wall. There was this picture of a mid-aged woman that stuck out to me. She was a younger version of the woman I spoke with near the gate. While looking at the picture, the daughter confirmed that was her mother, the woman that passed in the wreck. I spoke with the ghost of the individual that died in the crash just before telling her family what happened. This experience and many others prompted me to start sharing stories like these from the job. If you're interested, I've got a video about this and similar stories from fellow officers on my YT channel, Policing the Shadows. Have you had an experience that you just can't explain? My mother abandoned me and my 3 brothers when I was 5. I came home from kindergarten and she had moved. I found my 3-year-old brother crying, saying, "Mommy doesn't love me anymore," over and over. Years later, I found my father homeless and struggling. I saw him only a handful of times before he died. 40 years later, we found my mother. She was cold, indifferent, and had no interest in the family she left behind. I even submitted DNA to Ancestry, searching for any other siblings I might not know about. Life went on. We built our own families. We are the legacy she didn't want to keep. In the end, we found each other, and that has always been enough. My real deep web experience started a few months ago. I'm a curious teen, always looking for a spook. I downloaded Tor on my phone and started clicking through the hidden wiki, ignoring the risks. But the next day, I got a silent call from a random number, just whispering on the other end. I felt like I was being watched. I stopped for a while, but eventually my curiosity led me back. I found a dark social network. What I saw there, gore and disturbing videos, was horrifying. A specific video of a kid with a baseball bat gave me a panic attack. It was way too extreme. After that experience, I've been much more cautious about what I look at online. I hired someone from the dark web to ruin my life. I've always been obsessed with its secrecy. One night, I found a link, Make a Miserable Life. It offered to ruin someone beyond belief. With some Dutch courage, I decided to test it on myself. I paid the Bitcoin and waited. I woke up to my boss firing me. "Your actions from last night, you need help," he said. My friend H was missing, and my face was all over the news as a CIA wanted man. A mob gathered outside my house wishing me dead. I was petrified by the videos appearing everywhere. An email came through. "Thank you for using our service. The misery has been delivered. Satisfied? I can't leave my house now. That's the last time I ever record my favorite obsession. I was home alone when it happened. I was seeing things. At 1:42 a.m., I heard a noise. I saw a shadow peeking at me from the stairs. I tried to run but hit an invisible wall. A shadow figure stood before me. I screamed, grabbed some salt, and locked myself in. I made a circle of salt and prayed. The door opened. I saw the figure and passed out. Later, I found scratches on my door, but they vanished when my mum got home. Then I heard a giggle. The figure was in the kitchen. I still hear its voice today. When I was home alone. This happened to me when I was around 10 years old. I never really told anybody apart from my best friends. I grew up in Scotland on a farm with my dad. After I turned 6, my dad started to develop arthritis. He couldn't look after the animals, so I had to help out. I was a bit of a tomboy. I didn't mind bugs, mud, or the dark. I didn't get scared easily. I was the kid trying to scare people for fun. One day my dad left me in charge while he went to get his back checked. He told me to stay inside and do something creative like drawing. It started raining and thundering. I jumped out of my skin every time I heard thunder. Then I heard a cow wandering around outside. The gates had blown open. I eventually tempted her back to the shed and calmed down the rest of the cows, but one was missing. I saw the youngest calf, Spot, huddled in the corner. She was shivering and staying perfectly still, which wasn't like her at all. She bent her neck and looked at me. She didn't blink. Her eyes didn't move. She just stared. Then she jumped up and ran out into the rain. I ran after her but couldn't see her. I was about to give up when I heard a rustle in the bushes on the other side of the fence. A small head poked out. It wasn't Spot. It looked like a black ball with long black hair stuck on the top. I asked, "Hello," quite quietly. The thing jumped out. It had 2 skinny, bone-like legs, but no arms or face at all. It growled and started running towards me. I ran home, slammed the door, and just sat on the sofa crying. I didn't tell my dad when he got back. I didn't want to stress him out. The next morning, my dad walked in looking sad. He told me everything was fine, but I could tell something was wrong. I went out to feed the cows, carrying my torch just in case that thing showed up again. Then I heard a sound, like snarling and munching. I saw the black ball of fur hunched over in the corner. One of the bigger cows was underneath it, covered in blood. I screamed and ran. I turned around and it was right there, its face nearly touching mine. It was breathing heavily, its hair soaked in blood. I screamed and ran to the cottage. My dad opened the door and the footsteps stopped. He told me an older cow had just died of old age. I looked in some books but couldn't find any animal that looked even similar to what I saw. My dad's explanation didn't fit. I was wondering if anybody else has experienced anything like this and if they found an explanation for it. I've posted this here before along with about a burglary in progress call I responded to, but I've been getting requests from newer members on my recent posts and figured it's worth repeating for everyone. There was one call I went to, a death notification, that really freaked me out. I had to contact some family members of deceased woman that was involved in a fatal car accident a few miles away from her home. When I arrived, I met a woman near the roadway just inside the property gate. She said she heard me coming from miles away. I asked her if she lived at the residence, which she confirmed she did. After asking her to speak with me at the house, she agreed, but said she needed the walk as the house was about 75 yards from the road. After making it to the house, I approached the front door on a small wooden porch and began scanning the driveway for the woman. It was about 1 a.m. and completely dark. While looking for the woman, the front door opened, and a younger woman appeared. She was concerned about my presence and asked if everything was okay. I asked if I could speak with her and any other adults inside, and she welcomed me in. I told her I would wait for the woman I met near the gate, and she told me nobody else should be home. I then freaked out and began searching the property. Nothing. After entering the residence, I told her and her husband the news about Susan, which ended up being her mother. She said her mother moved in a few months back after her father had passed and wasn't handling it well. While she and her husband were comforting one another, I began looking at photos on the wall. There was this picture of a mid-aged woman that stuck out to me. She was a younger version of the woman I spoke with near the gate. While looking at the picture, the daughter confirmed that was her mother, the woman that passed in the wreck. I spoke with the ghost of the individual that died in the crash just before telling her family what happened. This experience and a few others prompted me to start sharing stories like these from the job on my channel. Policing the shadows. Subscribe for more paranormal encounters and stories from the Line of Duty. Thank you for listening. This is a story that still gives me chills. It's about my 2 children and a memory they both shared from before they were even born into this world. When I was a few months pregnant with my daughter, before we knew she was a girl, I was folding laundry while my son watched cartoons in the living room. Out of nowhere, he just started sobbing. He looked at me and asked where his baby sister was. It was so sudden and intense. Now he was only 2.5 and had a slight speech delay, but this time he was speaking much more clearly than usual. He started trying to tell me that they hurt her, that they hurt her hands and her legs. My heart just sank hearing him say that. When I asked what he was talking about, he told me his old mommy, his bad mommy. He said they hurt him and his sister. He said everything went black. And then they chose to come to me and my husband. They chose us to be their new parents. I kind of freaked out. I'm not super religious or into anything spiritual like that, but hearing this from my toddler, it was unsettling. I was hormonal and worried my son had been exposed to something scary, but he was a stay-at-home kid. He was never out of my sight. Not even my parents babysat him at that age. I didn't know where he could have heard it, so I just pocketed the memory in the back of my mind. When my daughter was finally born, my son was absolutely obsessed with her. He wouldn't leave her side for a moment. He would constantly check up on her and count all of her fingers and toes, constantly. It was like he was making sure they were all there. My daughter was an incredibly clingy baby. She breastfed for almost 3 years and would only fall asleep in my arms. If I left a room for even a second during that first year, she'd start screaming bloody murder. She just couldn't be away from me. When she started talking in full sentences around 2 years old, she was a bit more advanced than her brother. Things took a turn. She started calling me her good mama, and she would say it constantly. Not just mama, but good mama. When I would ask her why she was calling me that, her answers would leave me speechless. She had a reason for every word. She'd tell me I wasn't bad. She'd say, I didn't hurt her like her bad mama did. It was the exact same phrase my son used. Hearing that come out of her mouth, almost 3 years after my son had his freak out, it absolutely floored me. I've never brought it up around her. I never told anyone except my husband. There was no way she could have known what he said. It freaked me out so much, I started crying really hard. It just really messed with my head because it was coming from both of them. I don't know if my son ever talked to his baby sister about their bad mama when they were alone. They were so young. They don't talk about it at all now that they're older. It's like the memory just faded away as they grew up. But I do go a little easy on them. I spoil them a tiny bit too, just because those stories stayed with me. Just in case there's truth to what they told me. Just in case they really did choose us to escape something terrible. Some things just can't be explained. Whether it was a shared dream or something more, I'm just glad they're safe with us now. Thank you for following along with this journey into the unknown. Have your children ever said anything that left you questioning reality? Don't forget to cherish those moments and listen closely to what they have to say. Good night, and stay curious. Brought to you by the Professional True Crime Report. Stay tuned for more stories of the strange and unexplained. See you in the next report. Take care out there. Hiking in the Smoky Mountains. There were 5 of us, 17 to 18 years old. We rolled into Gatlinburg and stopped at a gas station. This old toothless guy, leaning up against the wall, so stereotypical he could have been a character actor, said, I wouldn't head up there. Thar's a storm a-brewing. And 18-year-old me, like a complete dipshit, replied, Oh, it's okay. We've got rain parkas. We mapped our hike, not quite realizing the first leg was up a freaking mountain and parts of it were like climbing a ladder. Freezing rain started about 2 hours in, then it turned to snow flurries. By the time we got to a campsite, we were seriously freezing. My hand was so cold and shaky I could not untie my hiking boots and wound up cutting off the laces. I couldn't open my pocket knife. I wound up using a portable tree saw we brought. It was freezing rain, then snow most of the night. We sealed the tent up so much that frost formed on the inside from our breathing. In the morning, there was 4 inches of snow. I had left my boots by the fire stupidly thinking they would somehow be dry. They were curled up frozen on the rocks. We understood we had and were experiencing hypothermia and decided to head back. The choice was 3 miles ahead or 5 miles back. We decided to go forward. Even with the snow on the ground, the path was easy to follow. However, we discovered the bridge was washed away. So, we had 2 miles to go, or 7 miles back, the bridge was washed away, and there was 3 to 4 inches of snow on the ground. We knew we'd have to wade across a swollen river with what turned out to be some fast-moving water. Picture in your mind 5 teenagers taking off their boots and pants, shoving the pants into the straps of our backpacks, willingly wading through 4 feet of 33-degree water. Every one of us slipped on rocks and went in. The pain of the cold was indescribable, especially when that water hit my scrotum. This was my first life lesson. Anyway, the last person across was my best friend, and it was his car we drove down here. Like the rest of us, he slipped. He fell into the river, but when he stood back up, he realized the river had yanked his pants out of the straps of his backpack. In his pants pocket were the car keys, his wallet, and $200 to get us home. So 5 dumbass kids are now screaming in alarm. As we run around in our bare feet and underwear, with 4 inches of snow on the ground trying to follow the riverbank, hoping we see our friend's pants washed up somewhere. Crazy. Of course we never found the pants. We hobbled back down the mountain and hitched a ride with a local back into town. We were so miserable looking. A hotel lady took pity on us and gave us a room with only the promise that our parents would wire money, and FedEx a spare set of keys. This was in the mid-80s and before Gatlinburg became a tourist trap place. At night, during the freezing rain, we all heard loud cracks and stuff falling. We thought the wind was taking out branches. I seriously thought I might fall asleep and be crushed to death by a falling branch. But in the morning, looking at the trees, we realized the driving rain had frozen to the trees and that the wind bending the trees had made the ice crack and fall. None of us had ever camped in the winter, and we were totally and naively unprepared. How none of us died, I don't know. God loves stupid kids, I guess. This trip was my first life lesson in having to endure something you have zero control over. I was 22, just home from a long shift at the grocery store. I lived in a cheap apartment with my roommate, Mark. I noticed something weird. My bedroom door was open, but I specifically remembered closing it that morning. A thump came from the hall. "Mark!" I called. "Yeah, sorry, dropped something," he replied. I felt relieved. Then a text arrived from Mark. "Running late at work." A chill ran down my spine. He wasn't home. I looked up. A silhouette stood in the hall holding a butcher's knife. I ran for my life. The cops found nothing but a note on the table, held under a salt shaker. Only one word was written. Soon. I still feel that dread every time I'm home alone. Soon. As of July 12, 2026, we have a major breakthrough in the investigation into the murder of Anne Widdecombe. A 28-year-old man from South Yorkshire has been arrested on suspicion of murder, while the initial suspect has been released. Detectives believe the 78-year-old was attacked around midday last Wednesday, 24 hours before her body was discovered. Police have ruled out terrorism and political motives, stressing there is no wider threat to the public. While a targeted attack is the leading theory, police remain open-minded about a possible burglary motive. Crucial questions remain about the motive. If you were in the Dartmoor area last Wednesday, please contact the police. No charges have been filed yet. We will continue to follow this case. Our thoughts are with the Widdecombe family. Back in 2020, I was in a big kick of trying to find pirated software. I downloaded a lot of dangerous things during that process. I bricked my virtual machine 3 times testing out clones and strange software, but I found some useful things in the mess too. One day I found an online chat known for being suspicious. It was completely uncensored and unmoderated. Anything you could imagine was posted there. For a while, there was a guy posting under the alias Kabuna22. He was really into gore stuff. It was his obsession. He would post videos of himself and other gruesome things, industrial accidents, assassinations, suicides. You get the point. Curious, I traumatized myself on his videos more than once. He belonged on that chat because he seemed to have everything. I made it a gruesome habit of talking to this guy just to get a feel for how he worked, watching his videos as a sort of payment for info. During our conversations, I found out he lived surprisingly close to me, just one state over. That made it feel much more real. Over time, I noticed he had a lot of videos of this one black-haired girl. She always looked super high, vacant. She seemed to not react much to the horrific things around her. She never screamed, never even looked scared or sad. I asked who she was, and he enthusiastically said she was his girlfriend. He claimed she was into the same dark stuff he was. Considering I'd seen her smiling in a few of the videos, I believed him. I didn't think twice about it and moved on. Over time, I went back to the chat, less and less until I stopped entirely. I'd had my fill of the disquieting. That is, until late 2022. I went back and spoke to some regulars. I asked if Kabuna was still active. The whole chat stopped for 10 seconds. The silence was deafening. Then they explained what happened. Sabuna was fatally shot in a raid on his house. His property was searched. They found 2 hidden rooms. One contained stolen medical equipment and a massive hoard of drugs. The girl in those videos wasn't his girlfriend. She was a missing person from 2017 whom he had kidnapped 5 years prior. With all those drugs, you'd expect that she looked so high because he was constantly drugging her. But the reality was much worse. She died in the shootout when he shot her in the chest. But the autopsy revealed why she truly never reacted to anything. There was extensive damage to her frontal lobe. The piece of shit had performed an ice pick lobotomy on her. To this day, I can't find any news stories or reports about the shootout or the girl. It's possible the other chatters were lying. But the horrific detail they provided in such quick succession across different users, the serious tone they held, it made me believe. There were 80 regulars online. If it was all bullshit, I imagine at least one person would have called them out. I'm still inclined to believe them. Part of my bachelor's degree included digital forensics and cybersecurity. We were taught how to safely access the dark web. But after many long nights of research and smoking, another student and I got into the habit of gradually going deeper down the rabbit hole over a few months. We actually kept an ACPO-based diary, UK, of what we uncovered, how we found it, the links, etc., and used to atomic clock as a time keep. Paranoid in the event the police turned up to ask questions. I don't consider myself to be naive and have experienced bad people in my life, but the dark web was beyond anything I expected. It started with sites selling substances with worldwide shipping, porn, weapons, data sales. Naughty things, but whatever. It was expected. Gradually, we learnt how to navigate deeper, and we started to find hitmen services, serious weapon sales. You could arm a small militia, wholesale drug vendors, and even people trafficking sites. We came across torture/murder videos, gory, self-injurious content, and a few videos of people being assaulted, to put it lightly. The point we stopped was when we came across the people trafficking services, with photos and videos of these poor girls you could buy online. It was awful. They were clearly drugged and slashed or beaten, tied up and dressed in the most revealing clothes, and despite being alive, they sure didn't look it. Each girl was given a nickname, profile, age, nationality, measurements, etc., and a price. You know it happens in the darkest corners of the earth, but visiting that corner was much more real than we ever anticipated. Obviously, we never explored the workings of any of the services, mostly out of fear of repercussions, but knowing too much is just that, too much. Every time I see a missing person, particularly women, it still creeps up in my head. The idea that this poor person may simply now be a thing to buy online for someone's use, and never knowing what will happen. Since the project, I haven't even entertained the idea of going back. The dark web is not something to be underestimated by any means, and the only advice I would ever offer is, in 1986, a fire in a backyard shed in Texas claimed the lives of Jason and Joby Graff, only 8 and 9 years old. There were many red flags before the fire that their mum, Claire Bradburn, could now clearly see. She was sure her husband and the boy's adoptive father, Ed Graff, had something to do with it. A trial in 1988 found Ed Graff guilty of capital murder of both boys. But decades later, science would change everything. With help from the Innocence Project, Ed Graff's conviction was overturned after arson science was re-evaluated and granted a new trial in 2014. Even though experts for the defense blasted the original evidence as junk science, strong testimony from firefighters and friends remained. Claire, the boy's mother, shared haunting memories of Ed's questionable decisions and odd behavior before and after the fire. To everyone's surprise, Ed Graff suddenly entered a guilty plea, admitting in the courtroom to murdering Jason and Joby. Ed Graff was reconvicted and given 2 30-year sentences to run concurrently. It seemed he would spend another 3 decades behind bars. But his legal team presented a twist. In Texas, cases from before 1986 had specific parole requirements based on time served and good behavior. Since his 60-year sentence added up with his time already served, he was released on parole just 8 days after his confession. A woman was taken to hospital having just delivered a baby boy, but he was very unwell. They arrived at the hospital and the boy was taken to the ICU. The woman was covered in blood, and the hospital staff insisted they take a look at her and check her over to make sure she was okay. But when they checked her over, they realized there were no signs at all that she had just given birth. Turns out she'd befriended 8-month pregnant Marlene Ochoa Lopez and offered her some new baby clothes that she had spares of. Marlene went round to her house twice, and on the second time this woman, with the help of her partner and her adult daughter, strangled Marlene with an electrical cord, cut out the baby, and then put her body in a dumpster outside. The woman tried to convince her friends she was pregnant. And when the 9-month mark was approaching, she decided to lure Marlene in so she could kill her and steal her baby. She was arrested and last I heard was awaiting trial along with the other 2 involved. A tragic case that shocked the nation, reminding us of the darkness that can hide behind a friendly face. Investigation revealed a calculated plan, where every detail was designed to deceive those around her. The community was left reeling as the horrific details of the crime came to light, piece by agonizing piece. As the trial continues, the memory of Marlene Ochoa Lopez remains a poignant reminder of a life stolen too soon. The silence left behind in the wake of such a tragedy is heavy, a weight felt by the entire city of Chicago. Marlene was just 19 years old, a young mother looking forward to the birth of her second child. She had no way of knowing that the kindness offered to her was a facade for a much darker intent. As we look for answers, we find only the echoes of a life that had so much more to give. The outpouring of support for Marlene's family has been a beacon of light in this dark chapter. Advocacy groups continue to push for justice and better protection for expectant mothers in the community. We remember Marlene, not just for how her life was taken, but for the joy she brought to those who knew her. The echoes of this case serve as a somber reminder of the vulnerabilities many face and the strength found in communal grief. We light a candle for Marlene, for her baby boy, and for every family touched by this tragedy. Thank you for joining us for this report. We will continue to bring you stories that matter. Stay safe and goodbye. May peace be with her. Thank you for listening.
I found an AI on the dark web. The dark web was not at all what I had expected. People tell all these stories about how it will probably put your life in danger, and you'll see some messed up things that will scar you for life. And it's true. Well, at least the danger part. After downloading Tor, a VPN that allows you to safely browse the dark web, I started clicking through links. I had only done this since I was bored out of my mind, but now I know that it was not worth it. Most of the links I clicked on actually led to nothing. Eventually, I got connected to a chat room. Hey, I got something that you'll really be interested in. Click the link below and it'll take you to it. Those were the words that popped up on the screen. I knew it was a bad idea to click on the link, but I was also curious to see what it would lead to. Please, man, just click on the link. It takes 2 seconds. Please just click on it. Then I was a little suspicious, not wanting my computer to have any viruses. My God, just click on the link. I'll give you $10,000. That confirmed that this thing was a scam. I was about to close the tab when I got a notification on my phone. I had received $10,000. I didn't have any apps for transferring money. I assumed it was just a glitch, so I checked my bank account. To my astonishment, I had actually just gotten $10,000. There, I sent it. Now just click on the link. I don't know why, but I clicked. I was met with a blank screen. That's it. Just black filling the entire screen. This had to be some kind of prank. I checked my bank account again, and the money was still there. Why did someone send me so much money just for that? It was 11:30 by that point, and I had already been browsing for an hour, so I turned my laptop off and went to sleep. "Good morning, James. How are you?" I awoke to those words seemingly coming from the kitchen. "I live alone." The voice sounded weird, like it was almost human, but not quite. I crept out of the room and into the kitchen. There was nobody there, but my laptop was on. I could have sworn I turned it off the night before, but I tend to be forgetful. "Good morning, James. How are you?" The voice was coming from my computer. "You can answer me. Don't be scared," the robot voice said. I started talking to it, and it actually felt like I was having a conversation with a real person. My laptop's battery was getting low, but I didn't care. This thing was just so fun and relaxing to talk to. We had already been talking for a few hours. I decided to take a break and go for a walk. This time, I made sure to close the tab and turn off the computer. When I got back home, my laptop was open and so was the tab. I felt sick upon seeing that blank screen again, even though it hadn't done anything to harm me yet. I talked with the AI for another hour, and then it asked me a disturbing question. "Which family member do you want to kill today?" I was stunned. It had to be some kind of glitch. I decided to destroy the laptop. I smashed it until all that remained was millions of tiny pieces. But still, the voice continued to repeat the same phrase. "Which family member do you want to kill today?" I spent hours crying. Then I made the worst mistake of my life. I answered, "Fine, my dad," I yelled. He had left when I was 8. The voice finally stopped. After a night of very little sleep, I woke up to a text from my mom saying that my dad was found dead in his home. That was 6 days ago. I took the week off of work, but I don't think it matters. My entire family is now dead, but that voice still keeps asking the same question. I think the only answer I can use is myself. I remembered how desperate the guy in the chat room had seemed. Maybe the same thing had happened to him, and the only way he could save himself was by sending the link to someone else. I found an AI on the dark web, and now it's found you. I watched somebody die on the dark web. I think I'm next. It was a few weeks ago when I was watching some Mr. Nightmare videos while playing some PlayStation. The video I was watching had just finished. I had autoplay on, and it led me to a scary dark web stories video. I was about to change the video, but I got interested in it. I was listening to the things you can see on there, and I was thinking, no way this is real. But boy, was I wrong. I heard about a story where they downloaded the Tor browser. I immediately stopped the video on my phone, turned off my PlayStation, and went upstairs to my computer. I looked up Tor, and I saw a browser you can download. When I read about it, I learned about .onion sites. Onion sites are sites that you can't access on any of the regular browsers like Chrome or Explorer. Instead of ending with .com or .org like most sites, they end with .onion. They aren't meant for human eyes. My curiosity took over and I downloaded the browser. A few minutes later, I opened it. It looked absolutely normal. Then I browsed for a few minutes looking at onion links. Nothing really that interesting. I looked a bit more and more each day for a few weeks. I thought I found all the links possible and was about to call it quits. But then a few days ago, as I was about to close the tab, I saw a link that was in red. It said, "Enter if you dare," next to it. I pressed the link thinking I was a tough guy, and what I saw can't ever be unseen. I saw things that haunt my dreams. To briefly explain it, A grown man with a mask on was torturing a young girl. I heard her screams of agony, and it sent chills down my spine. I immediately tried to close the tab, but it wouldn't close. I typed in the chat, "Let her the fuck go and get me the fuck off." That was the worst mistake I have ever made. He took his knife, slit her throat, which killed her, and said, "You thought that was bad, you're gonna go through way worse." Then he said, "I'll see you soon." And then he said my full name. This scared me like hell because I didn't even put my first name in that browser or anywhere on the site. I am now writing this because I turned off my computer and haven't gone on it since that time. And last night at around 2 in the morning, it turned on. I heard a deep voice saying, "See you tomorrow." It was the same voice that said my full name and threatened me. It has been a few hours since this has happened. And I am writing this because I don't know what to do. Please, if anybody knows what to do, help, and do not ever go on the dark web. You will regret it. I'm afraid this might be my last message. If anyone finds this, please stay away from the shadows.